For nearly 2,000 years, Christians, beginning with Constantine, began to murder, pillage, rape, and hang and burn with fire the Jews and the followers of Yehoshua. For this reason, only on my YouTube videos, I will wear the clothing of shame that the Jews were forced to wear, and also the yellow star that the Jews were forced to wear before they were dragged off to be burned at the stakes or in the ovens. And as those of us who are paying attention rightly note that yesterday was a notable day, much like the day of the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration was declared weeks before the 24th day of the 9th month on the Hebrew calendar. That particular day that our Father in heaven told the Jews, told all Israel to remember this day, from this day and upward. So I would like to go to that scripture once again. We'll start in verse 18. Consider now from this day and upward, which means forward. In other words, what he's saying is, on into the future, remember this day. Don't forget it. Consider the reason why that day is important. He says, the day, even the 24th day of the 9th month, even the day that the foundation of Jehovah's temple was laid, consider it. He says to consider it twice in the same verse. In verse 19, it is easy to skip over, but you better not skip over. Because in verse 19 is tangible evidence and tangible proof. What is this blessing he's talking about? Is the seed yet in the barn, as yet the vine and the fig tree and the pomegranate and the olive tree has not brought forth before the 24th day of the 9th month. But he says, but this day, from this day will I bless you. And what has happened? What happened? What happened was, after the Balfour Declaration, where the British made a solemn promise to our Father in heaven, Yehovah, the Holy One of Israel, to make a homeland for the Jews. And then it didn't take long before they reneged. It didn't take long before the British blocked the door to the Holy Land, reneging on the promise, thereby breaking the everlasting covenant as written about, I believe it's in Isaiah 34. Yet, once the war was over, what happened? What happened was this. Jews began to come over from Europe anyway. They established the State of Israel in 1948. And they defeated their enemies, the Arabs, when all the Arabs round about tried to wipe them off the face of the earth. And then what happened? Then the blessings came. Seed began to be in the barn. The vines began to grow. The fig trees began to flourish. And the pomegranate trees and the olive trees had brought forth. Because you see, the 24th day of the 9th month, the day that the British took Jerusalem away from the Ottomans, that was the day. It was supposed to be on that day when the blessings were supposed to begin for Israel, but the British blocked the blessing. Now, we have another world leader who's made a promise, or actually, to be honest and truthful. In 1995, the United States Congress and Senate passed a law demanding that Israel's undivided and eternal capital is Jerusalem. It is written in that law. And yet, they provided a waiver. They provided a sleazy, sneaky, dirty, filthy way out that every president so far has taken up until now. Even Donald Trump took that route in the first 6 months of office after he made the solemn promise to abide by the law. Now, anytime any nation passes a law that blesses Israel in an unequivocal fashion, the way the 1995 law that Congress passed, and then they went and tried to weasel their way out of it, I can guarantee you that our Father in heaven notices it and pays attention to it. And according to reports that I have read, the first time that Donald Trump, in the first 6 months, when he signed the waiver, he was alone. He was very angry with his staff because they were all against fulfilling the 1995 law. So he signed the waiver one time, and the next time he refused to do it. They even said, if you looked on the news reports, even in the Israel news reports, they even said that Donald Trump was going to go ahead and sign the waiver, but at the same time, he was going to declare Jerusalem Israel's capital. He did not sign the waiver. He didn't do it. And I had asked a question just before this happened. Is a voice going to whisper in his ear, you do this or else? I mean, after all, I'm not calling Donald Trump Balaam by any means. But let me remind everyone that I have proved, using the scriptures, using the prophets, and using the apostles to prove that there is no more time left, that Jerusalem is to be reanointed as the holy place. Undivided Jerusalem. So I speculate that Donald Trump may have been ordered to do so, since he didn't have the guts to do it in the first 6 months. He was ordered, I believe he was ordered to declare Jerusalem Israel's capital, and ordered not to sign the waiver. So I need to warn those in the U.S. government. There are a couple of members of the Senate who voted for the 1995 law who are now railing against Donald Trump for fulfilling the obligation, which means there is a bit of backsliding going on, and I'm warning the U.S. government not to backslide on this promise like the British backslid on theirs, because the British are responsible now for thousands and thousands of deaths of Jews by refusing to let them in to the Holy Land in their time of need. The United States may not now, may not ever follow in the footsteps of the British Crown in their betrayal of the Jews. Now, I see on a couple of newspapers, Israeli publications, for example, on Debka.com, Czech Republic follows Trump, recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. That title, folks, is misleading. If the Czech Republic did that, so did the Russians. But we all know that the Russians have said that West Jerusalem is the capital, which means, in their opinion, East Jerusalem is not. Well, this is the same route that the Czech Republic has taken. These halfway measures are acts of treachery, serpentine treachery. That's what the serpent would do. And now, with all the nations condemning Donald Trump's action, we have this headline: UN Security Council to meet on Jerusalem Declaration Friday. 8 permanent Security Council members, including Britain and France, watch this event carefully, folks, have convened a UN security meeting for Friday in the wake of U.S. President Donald Trump's decision to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. They are joined by non-permanent members: Bolivia, Egypt, Italy, Senegal, Sweden, Britain, and Uruguay. UK Prime Minister Theresa May opposed the Trump decision, saying, "We believe it is unhelpful in terms of prospects for peace in the region. The British Embassy is based in Tel Aviv, and we have no plans to move it." The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is expected to address the meeting. He said earlier that Jerusalem is a final status issue and must be resolved through direct negotiations. Germany said it does not support Trump's decision. The European Union expressed serious concern. You see what's happening, folks. Now, what I want to do is go to Joel 3. I've gone over this many times, and it's worth repeating again. Joel 3 provides a timeline. It's kind of hard to mess it up. In fact, I think a 5-year-old who's capable of reading could understand the timeline here. First of all, based upon the prophets, we all know that in the days of Jeroboam and Rehoboam, that the house of Judah and the house of Israel was divided up, was split up, because of the sins of Solomon. That being said, Joel 3 and verse 1, for behold, in those days and in that time frame. So there cannot be a whole lot of time go by when he brings the exiles of Judah and Jerusalem for the next event to happen. There cannot be a lot of time going by. In fact, it should be within that generation. I think you can conclude within the generation. What is a generation? Well, according to what Jehovah spoke to Abraham about the Israelites being in Egypt as slaves for 4 generations or 400 years, we can safely assume that a generation is 100 years. So, within 100 years, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. When did this start happening? It did not really start happening until after World War II, after 1945, because the British kept it from happening. They blocked the hand of their Creator. They did. And now, what's going to happen? He says, within those days and within that time. What time? When he brings in the exiles of Judah and Jerusalem. Judah and Jerusalem are the Jews of Jerusalem, the Jews that were originally in Jerusalem in the first place. They have to be repatriated before the other Jews in the house of Israel are brought in. What is the next step? Is the next step bringing in Israel? No, that's not the next step. Is the next step the rapture? No, it is not. Verse 2, I will gather all Goyim, Gentiles, nations, and bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat and will put them on trial. He's going to sit on the judgment seat, as it says in Daniel 2. For my people and my heritage, Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations, among the Gentiles, among the heathen, and partitioned my land. And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they may drink. Now, I know the Christians want to say, or some Christians want to say, oh, that's the Muslims. Who are the drinkers? That would be you, Christians. And then he points his finger at Tyre and Zidon, Hezbollah, Lebanon, and the Palestinians. And he is telling them, what are you going to do about it? A recompense for what? Well, what happened yesterday may make this scripture abundantly clear. You see, if the word of Jehovah came to Donald Trump and ordered him to do what he did yesterday, and they start burning his images in the streets and start burning American and Israeli flags, who are they doing this to? They are doing it to our Father in heaven, the Holy One of Israel. And maybe that is why he is saying, will you get revenge on me? And I think that this act that Donald Trump did yesterday is not his act, but it is Jehovah's act, Israel's Redeemer's act. He did it. He then appointed Jerusalem to be once again Israel's capital, the holy place, as it is written in Daniel 9. The 77s are complete. I have proven that. I prove that. I have gone over that for the last year, over and over and over again. I have proved that. But even a fifth grader can prove it. It was so easy. But people are so brainwashed by their paid preachers, because the paid preachers don't want thy kingdom come. They don't want that. Why? Because they won't get paid anymore. And so what is next on the agenda? Now, like I said, he provides a time. What's next on the agenda? So he summarizes and says that he's going to gather all nations and put them on trial in the valley of Jehoshaphat for what they did to Israel. And I believe it begins with Tyre, Zidon, and the Palestinians, folks. Here we go. The war is about to begin, and who is going to start it? Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, who reside in Tyre and Zidon, and the Palestinians are going to want revenge, payback, recompense. Exactly as is written right here. And in retaliation to this, they are going to be deported. They're going to be deported out of Gaza. They're going to be deported out of Judea and Samaria. And they are going to be deported out of Lebanon altogether. And my, oh my, is this going to enrage the nations, the Europeans, the Russians. It will. Mark my words. Some people will say, have your beer and your popcorn ready. I say, you better have your 3.5 years supply of food ready and water. Because this is not going to be just a show. This is going to be the most frightening event, most horrific event that the world has ever seen. Time of Jacob's trouble. Well, first of all, let me go to Daniel 9 real quickly. Daniel 9, yes. I want to briefly go over where it talks about uh, 70 weeks. Verse 24, 70 weeks are determined upon your people, that's the Jews, and upon your holy city, that is Jerusalem, to finish the transgression. In other words, once the transgression is finished, then reconciliation with our Father in heaven must begin. To make an end of sins and to make reconciliation for iniquity and to bring in everlasting righteousness and to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy place. The word holy is holy place. What is that? Jerusalem. And the greatest military power in the world has just announced that its Congress is correct. Jerusalem is Israel's undivided capital. It is therefore the holy place. It is now officially recognized as the holy place, and I believe that finishes up what Gabriel said in Daniel 9, with the exception of one major detail. What is that detail? Same as in Joel 3. Verse 27, Titus the Roman general made a covenant with his legions not to destroy the temple. They were going to sack Jerusalem but not destroy the temple. Why? Because he wanted to take the parts and pieces of the temple one by one to Caesar's Pantheon. Read your history books. And he was given 7 years to get the job done, but the temple and Jerusalem were destroyed in 3.5 years. The sacrifices, there are dates. I gave dates multiple times on my videos. The dates that the war started, the dates that the sacrifices and oblations were caused to cease, and the date that the war was over. I have given those dates. And everyone who is listening to these videos are just as capable of researching these things as I am. There is no excuse in the days of the internet, especially, for not knowing these things. For the overspreading of abominations, plural, he shall make it desolate. And he did. Titus the Roman general made the temple and Jerusalem desolate. Those who claim this event has yet to happen, they are claiming it has never happened, which makes them Holocaust deniers. It has happened. Payback is next. What is the payback? It says, even till it was consumed, and it was consumed, and then that which shall be determined shall be poured out upon the desolator. Who was the desolator? Caesar. Titus was the desolator, who sits on Caesar's throne today. The man at the Vatican does. What I'm saying is, I have proven 62 sevens. So we have the 62 sevens. Okay, we'll start off with the 7 sevens. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto Messiah the Prince. Notice he says Messiah the Prince, not Messiah the suffering servant. You see, you cannot be a suffering servant and a prince at the same time. It's not possible. A servant is not a prince. So, that particular part, 7 sevens unto Messiah the Prince, is for the last days. So you take that one and put it aside and move on to the next one. What is the next one? And 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall even in troublous times. And after the 62 weeks, the 62 weeks, shall Messiah be cut off. Also, you see, the 62 weeks portion was for the suffering servant. How do you count the 62 weeks? From Zerubbabel's call to rebuild Jerusalem, unto the day the Messiah was cut off, exactly as it says. Please don't deviate from the scripture, as your preachers tell you to do. There's nowhere where it says 7 plus 62 weeks. That's not what it says. It says 7 weeks and 62 weeks. 7 weeks for Messiah the Prince, 62 weeks for Messiah the suffering servant. You see? We already can see that the 62 weeks has been accounted for. Why? Because a suffering servant is no longer a suffering servant. That portion is finished. The 1 week, where 1 week is allotted for the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple, that was done by Titus the Roman general, so therefore that is also complete and finished. So then what is left? What is left is the call to rebuild Jerusalem, which happened on June 7, 1967 on the Gregorian calendar, and it began with the reuniting of Jerusalem by the IDF, and then the call was made exactly as is written in verse 25. It happened. General Shlomo Goren made the call, and he said these words. I will say it in English. This day in Jerusalem, as in the Jerusalem of old, rebuild. That's what he said. That's translated from Hebrew to English. So the call was made. You can look it up and you can find it. 7 weeks. 7 sevens is 49 years. That 7 sevens ended in Shavuot of 1916 on the Gregorian calendar. But then there had to be a jubilee, which means a 50th year. That ended, once again, Shavuot 2017. And now a declaration has been made right on time. The declaration that Jerusalem is Israel's eternal capital. From the largest military on earth, from the uttermost parts of the earth. And I also will say, from the uttermost parts of the earth will Jehovah's praises be sang. It is written. Now I done forgot where I was heading to next, but I had to get this portion out. Maybe I should go here. Psalm Psalm 2. The nations are conspiring, folks. They're angry. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against Jehovah and against his anointed. Remember what we just read in Daniel 9, to re-anoint the holy place. So when they gather together against Jerusalem, the re-anointed holy city, they are gathering together against the king of that city, Jehovah's anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. He that sits in the heavens shall laugh, Jehovah shall have them in derision. Then he shall speak to them in his great wrath, and vex them in his sore displeasure. Yet I have set my king upon my holy hill of Zion. Now this is a promise. He says, he will declare the decree. Jehovah has said unto me, you are my son, this day have I begotten you. Ask of me, and I shall give you as slaves the heathen for your inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for your possession. You shall break them with a rod of iron, and you shall dash them into pieces like a potter's vessels. Be wise now, therefore, O you kings. Be instructed, you judges of the earth. Serve Jehovah with trembling and fear. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish on your way when his wrath is kindled but just a little bit. Blessed are they who put their trust in him. So what we're going to have here now is a separation of the goats from the sheep. And things are going to happen so quickly now. Like I said, have your 3.5-year supply of food ready and water. If you don't know how, there are plenty of videos on YouTube that are free that will teach you how. And maybe I'll do a video on how to do the same. I don't know yet. I'll try to find some time to do that.